Charlie, can you look in that middle camera for me and give us a clap to get us started? Nailed it. Howdy folks, I'm Dan Gross and welcome to this brand new episode of the Rochester Indie Musician Spotlight, Rochester's premier music and interview show. This episode is brought to you by Bernunzio Uptown Music. Located in Rochester's East End, they've been providing Rochester and the world with quality vintage, new, and used string instruments since 1976. Bernunzio also offers concerts, workshops, and jam sessions. This season we're in this warm, local, and creative space, Bop Shop Records. They're located right outside the city at 1460 Monroe Avenue, and they're your Rochester home for blues, classic rock, jazz, and Americana in vinyl for the past 35 years. Joining me today is Charlie Lindner, a great dude, pianist, and friend of the program. Fans of the show will recognize him. He was one of our holiday special guests, so we're very happy to have him back in a little bit more of his natural environment, not clad in an ugly sweater, if memory serves.
Oh, that's right.
Charlie's bringing together both his usual, he calls it funky jazz, and his house jazz to a rockin' show Three Heads Brewing with his normal trio. So that's Kyle Vock on bass. Oh, he's got a nice poster for us. Look, yeah, put it there, that one. That's just a beautiful. So that's Charlie. That's Kyle Vock on bass and Matt Ramerman on drums. Look at that. I should hire you to be Vanna White. And so you can clearly see Friday, April 14th at 8 p.m. at Three Heads Brewing, so they do it at the beer garden. We're very glad he's here to preview with us. Charlie, thanks for joining me today, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dan. This is great.
So when did you start playing music and or the piano?
I started playing on an organ, actually.
Really?
Yeah. At my grandmother's house when I was about 8 years old.
Uh-huh.
And then from there, my parents purchased a piano, much like this one.
Yeah.
And just continued to study.
And so the legend began.
And so the legend began.
I gotta ask. Did your grandma have like a Hammond B3 organ, or do you mean an organ?
Yeah, she had a Lowry.
Okay. I was gonna say you'd have one hip grandma if she had a Hammond B3.
Oh,
somewhere.
if she had a Hammond, that would be incredible with those rotating Leslie speakers. Yeah.
If only. So, what were you? I mean, did you take classical lessons when you were a little kid?
No, just started out with basic piano lessons, but one of the things I quickly was interested in was taking existing compositions and then improvising on them or making them my own.
Yeah. And were you starting to like play a lot when you were a little kid with other people, or you just kind of doing?
No, it's just my own. But it was what really inspired me very much was my father had a recording of Scott Joplin, Maple Leaf Rag. You might
lay it on us, man.
You get the idea.
It still sticks to this day, so it must have been really important.
Well, he played that recording for me, and I was very interested in learning that. But I was in 5th grade.
Right.
And so the legend begins.
Now the legend really begins. Yeah.
That with help from my mother and she was a librarian at Rogers Middle School. And I'd have to go in early in the morning, and she purchased a keyboard for me so I could practice in the morning. And there was an English teacher she actually had a music degree, and she would come down in the morning before school and teach me measure by measure the Maple Leaf Rag.
Oh, cool.
And I'd have to try to figure out those notes, and I ended up playing that at the talent show the next year.
Oh, no kidding.
So,
and now what you do now, you use the words funky jazz. And we talked about this a little bit, I think, at the Christmas special, but I think your sound's actually pretty instantly recognizable. Be like, oh, that's Charlie playing. How did you develop the sort of quirky approach you have to jazz?
Well, at the time, I don't want to date myself, but at the time, Fish was going through an era in their career where they're playing a lot of funk jams. They're getting into these improvisational jams that were deep, deep funk, just soulful, and just went on for 25 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was listening to what was it? A compilation. It was called In Your Face Funk. I think it was 5 discs in that compilation, and it featured a lot of the soul music from the 60s and 70s. So with combination of a little bit of both, and at the time, hip hop was really becoming popular, and I think it was just a combination of all those things coming together, and that's why I call it funky jazz. Yeah, so that's where I came up with.
Do you remember us talking about? I mean, basically, you instead of adding like 4 notes in a phrase, you add a 5th one.
Oh yeah, that was
like
my
that's
unorthodox way of playing jazz because I feel it more than I count the phrases or notes, and there is a proper way and a mathematical way to play jazz changes. Absolutely, and you can land on your goal note slightly before the beat or slightly after. If it's right on the beat, great. But it's jazz. But yeah, my phrases tend to be a little bit more quirky. Yeah. And I started listening to Art Tatum a lot a few years ago. Yeah. And I noticed, he'll do these huge runs.
But like at light speed.
Yeah, exactly. About 10 times faster than that. Yeah. So, but it was just interesting the way he was phrasing things because he wasn't a, necessarily bebop player. Right. He was doing more of the stride playing. But, yeah, so I was just kind of taking, I was attempting to play jazz, and that's the style I developed. So how did you meet Kyle and Matt then, when you were like getting together and sort of playing the more crystallized, funky jazz stuff? I've known Matt Ramerman since 5th grade, 6th grade, I think it was, yeah. So all the way back to Rogers Middle School. And shout out to Rogers Middle School. Yeah. We'll have to tag them in this. Right, oh yeah, absolutely. So, alumni doing great things. So, Matt has always been a good friend, and, he has his own studio now, the Green Room, and I told him I was putting this group together, and could he recommend anyone? And he recommended Danny Zeman. But Danny's actually my bass teacher. But he's pretty busy. He's doing his own. Danny does a lot. So I went down. The next one on the list was Kyle Vock. I said, okay, we'll go with this guy. Yeah, and it worked out great. No, you guys sound great together, man. You guys playing the set was a ton of fun. You guys have such a great chemistry together. And now for this set at Three Heads Brewing, it's one half funky jazz. It's kind of the first set, and the second half is this thing you've dubbed as house jazz. Right. So can you tell us what house jazz is? And I know you bring, if you can, I know you bring all along this little pad called Ableton. Yes, if you could tell. We'll get into that too. But basically, the house jazz, well, we know what jazz is. Well, what is house music? Well, house was developed in about 1980, 1983, somewhere in there, in Chicago. And it was a form of dance music. So basically, jazz house, it's, according to Wikipedia, he's breaking out the Wikipedia. A way to identify an artist caught between polar extremes of mainstream house techno and ambient electronic music. So that's the Wikipedia definition. That's kind of, yeah. Oh my god. But I see it as taking that same driving beat, applying it to real acoustic instruments, and adding those nice jazz. Right. Yeah, and we were talking about it. And we were talking about it a little bit. I mean, Ableton is essentially like this drum pad board where you can load in sounds. Right. It's like you tap a button and then it plays everything you sampled through the speaker. Ableton is a software that's this music production software that allows you to record in and then manipulate your recorded audio. Right. But Ableton's very nice because Ableton stands for Ableton Live. The live aspect of it, and there's 2 modes in Ableton. There's something called arrangement mode, which if you're reading a book, you read left to right. That's how a song happens, left to right. But in session mode, well, things are completely different. Are you ready to go into the musical lightning round? Okay. Roll the show a little bit? Okay. Let's do it. So these are quick answers if you got them. Okay. Who is your biggest musical influence? Jeez, that's a really hard one. Well, if it was jazz, it would be Bill Evans.
Are you involved in any other musical projects or bands right now?
Yes.
They are?
Mrs. HD,
Mm-hmm.
which incorporates members of many different bands. Actually, Matt Ramerman's in that band. And the owner of Three Heads Brewery, Jeff Dale.
That sounds like a fun group.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
If you could play another instrument or have another musical talent, what would it be?
Drums.
That was really fast. What genre turns you on other than the one you play?
Heavy dance music. Just absolutely gritty, grimy, heavy dance music.
What genre turns you off?
I just cannot get into the really, really heavy metal stuff.
If you could accomplish one thing in music and be happy, what would it be?
I want to play for 50,000 people.
That's cool.
It would just be fun.
It sounds like fun. Okay, we're going to go to our Rochester round, so it's the same sort of thing. Quick answers if you got them, and it's going to be all Rochester themed.
Okay.
What's your favorite Rochester venue to watch a show?
Eastman.
What is your favorite venue to perform at?
It used to be Water Street Music Hall. It's a nice big stage, but I don't know.
Can you pick one? Oh, let's say Three Heads.
Oh,
You've
yeah.
played there before. That's a cool place.
I should say.
Now, this one sort of ties in. What's your favorite restaurant or bar?
I go to Aladdin's a lot.
Who or what is your favorite Rochester musician or band?
Better do the top three. I like Hewa.
Yeah,
Heard of them.
I have. Brandon's a friend of the program.
Yeah, I really enjoy Lost Wax.
Another Brandon Caroselli group.
Yes.
Yeah, he's doing
that
some good
was
stuff.
I was at an opportunity to sit in with them.
Oh, nice.
For a whole show.
Yeah.
Set. And I think the last one. I'm big Giant Panda. Definitely.
You picked three really good ones.
Tried to do across the spectrum.
Right. Okay, now we got one more for you. Heaven forbid, if or when you leave Rochester, how would you like people to remember you and your music?
I've based a lot of things recently on Jeff Dale's philosophy, which is building community in Rochester, and I've seen him be a great force at doing that. And this is the long answer, but basically, I see what he's doing for the community, and I start to think, well, maybe the music's not all about me and what I'm doing, you know? How can we include more people in not just the live performance, but also in videos, a lot of new videos I'm putting out where they include local artists and promote businesses too. So it's building more of a community. So if I ever leave Rochester, I think I'd like people to remember me as somebody who is building community much like Jeff Dale is.
All right. Well, that was a great answer, Charlie. We really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
You can check him out at Three Heads Brewing. Let's put up the sign again. Why not? Beautiful. At Three Heads Brewing on April 14th at 8 p.m. with Kyle Vock. So that's Kyle. And Matt Ramerman on drums. And he's playing two sets. His first one of funky jazz and the other one is house jazz. I'm Dan Gross. Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Rochester Indie Musician Spotlight. And we'll see you again soon.